Welcome to Childcare Conversations, the podcast where early childhood leaders like you get real-world strategies, honest talk, and a whole lot of support. Whether you're running one center or many, we're here to help you lead with confidence and clarity. This episode is brought to you by this quarter's sponsor, Playground, the all-in-one childcare management software. We're all about managing monkeys and saving you time at your center. With this platform, you can. We're proud to partner with a team that's as committed to your success as we are. Learn more at tryplayground.com. Now, let's get into today's conversation, one we think you're really going to love.
Welcome back to this episode, and we are so excited because we have Jason Lody on with us today. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Okay, I'm like, I did not ask that before we started. And we are going to talk about kind of having more than one location, and Jason's going to talk to us about what that can, on an extreme side, look like, and even talk a little bit about his adventures in working with lots of sites, how he got to his role. And Carrie and I have all kinds of questions, kind of like he doesn't know what they are yet, but we've got questions, I'm sure. So with that, Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you find your way into early childcare in your current position? Let's put it that way.
Sure. So I'm currently the Chief Executive Officer of Eventus Education, and we are a national school management company. We own and operate preschools across the East Coast of the United States and branching out west. Right now, we have about 26 schools. I say about because not all of them are open. Some of them are still in the final stages of acquisition. But within the next 30 to 45 days, we'll have all 26 up and running from Ohio and Pennsylvania all the way down to Florida. So we're really, really excited about that. We have a pretty robust central office here outside of Washington, D.C., with heads of schools and a director of strategic growth who help support all the schools. But I'm really excited about the growth that we've had because we've gotten to 26 schools in 11 months.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
So what made you decide to do this?
Well, I'm crazy, right? No, my beginnings to Adventist Education, I'm the founder of the company, but I started this company shortly after I exited from a previous portfolio that I had. I sold my portfolio to a national provider, and 3 weeks after that, what I thought would be retirement, I got bored and started another company, and then started getting contacted by private equity firms asking if I'd be interested in partnering with them to have a rapid scale of school acquisitions. And after a little thought, I said, yes, let's take that risk. And I'm all about rewards coming from, significant risks. I am not risk averse. And so I think that's why we have 26 schools in 11 months. My entry, though, to early childhood is not traditional because I used to be a police officer. I was a police officer in Washington, D.C., and I left the police work after a good amount of time on the street to work on my doctorate. And I've always wanted to be a teacher, and law enforcement was also a passion of mine. So I honestly pursued law enforcement before I got too old to pursue it. So that was in my order of things to do in life after skydiving, become a police officer. So I did the skydiving, and then I went to be a police officer.
You figured you survived skydiving, so you
right.
could give, and it's not like, so you were a police officer in Washington, D.C. It's not like you picked some rural town to try that skill. Okay.
Yes, this is the Washington, D.C., where all the monuments are, but I patrolled the area where none of the tour buses go. The area where if I did see a tour bus, they were probably lost because you didn't want to be in that part of the city.
You were in the part where people live.
That's right. Where 70% of the district resides is outside of the downtown area, but that's where I patrolled, and I loved every second of it. And I really valued community policing and community engagement. And I worked to really establish relationships with local businesses, and received the Crime Reduction Award my second year on patrol, and I was really proud of that. But I also knew that I wasn't going to want to do this for 25 years. And I was going to get too old where, hopping a fence every day and chasing people literally was just wasn't something I woke up excited about doing. But I always wanted to be a teacher, and I thought that I needed to exit sooner rather than later. So I started my doctoral work, and I took a leave of absence from the police department, which ended up being a retirement. And then I worked in the District of Columbia Public Schools, doing school improvement, doing school turnaround. And my niche was in that kindergarten to 8 age range and grade level range. And I loved every minute of it. But what I found was my kindergartners, I always had every school year, the start of it with, this thought, like, why are some of my kindergartners successful? And why are some of my kindergartners really, really struggling from day one? And that's what really got me interested in the idea of early childhood. Like, what happens before a child gets into kindergarten? And fast forward, I retired from the DC public schools as a principal, and I started a preschool for 2 reasons. One, I needed something to do after my second retirement. And two, I couldn't find a preschool that I was comfortable sending my child to. And so if I can't find one where I would feel comfortable dropping my kid off every morning, I need to start one where I would bring him with me. And that's what I did. And so I created the first of what would be 5 schools that had a focus of academic readiness, but blended with the social and emotional learning that I saw so much of a need in the kindergarten. Like, we worked backwards. What do we want our incoming kindergartners to be able to do? But also, how do we want them to interact with their peers? How do we want them to be global citizens and learn how to share, learn how to care, learn how to be comfortable with routines, how do they learn how to lose a game, right? All those life skills that help them be
I've got
good
some
citizens.
20-year-olds you need to teach that skill to.
Yeah, over the years we tend to lose those skills, but at least they go into kindergarten strong. And so, within 18 months, I was contacted by a national company interested in acquiring my schools. And at first I said no. And then they called back a few weeks later and literally gave me the offer I couldn't refuse. And here we are with Adventist Education.
Which
We've got a friend who's going through that right now. People keep asking her and she's like, but I'm not ready. And so we're actually coaching her through figuring out when she will be ready or if she's never going to be ready.
Or what is like you said, the magic number, the can't refuse number. And I don't know if you struggled with this in her case, but I'm sure some of the people you've acquired out of 26 schools, you've had this situation at least once where it's not just the owner. It could be the owner and a sibling partner or a spouse partner or a child that's the partner or family work in the business with them. And that's the situation, as her and her sister are the business partners and her daughter is one of her site directors. She's got five locations. And so it's not really just a her decision. It is a family decision. She has her own wishes and goals and like her own personal next step. But the others don't necessarily. So
Yeah.
you've retired unsuccessfully 3 times.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, so you've met Carrie's mom.
Somebody who did that. Yep.
And now
My
you
mom
went
says
from
the
having,
only thing, she says the only thing she has failed at is retiring. So she's given up. She's not going to retire anymore now that she's in her mid 80s.
Well, I just say that I'm too young for a rocking chair and too old for TikTok. So there's nothing else for me to do but stay in the field.
So you're not envisioning becoming a TikTok influencer and making your money
I
that
leave
way?
that to my sons. That's their life goals. Both of them want to be influencers, whatever that means, but they want to be it. So leave it to them.
Oh, what a hoot. What a hoot. So, Jason, when we were talking, excuse me, before,
Uh-oh, now Kate's the one having it.
I have that effect on people. She's getting so my story is so
You
emotional.
just made her speechless.
It's so
Yeah,
emotional.
just that's the way it is.
Well,
So,
anyway,
you're growing your.
so what we were talking about earlier was how you have all these locations, you've got all these people kind of working with you. So if you kind of missed in his little Jason's quick bio intro, is that the company he's with right now that he started, they've acquired or opened 26 locations in less than a year or a year and a half.
11 months.
11 months. So in less than a year, they have 26 locations, which obviously probably comes with just a little bit of growing pains.
A lot of growing pain. Yeah.
And your locations before, you had 5, right? So you were probably really comfortable from 5 to 10, right? That probably was something that didn't, wasn't a whole lot of new learning. But what are some of the things that you've learned now that you have literally, you are 5 times what you were when you retired when you retired the third time, about a year and a half ago. So,
Right. I think that one of the first lessons learned is when I had my first portfolio, they were all within a 10-minute drive of each other. The closest were, less than a mile apart from each other. So being able to visit all the schools every week and be, visibly present and hands-on in the day-to-day activities as much as I wanted to be across all 5 of those schools was a manageable practice. And I didn't have or need a central office or some type of ancillary support for the management. I was able to do payroll, and my directors were able to do kind of time cards, and I empowered my directors to really take ownership of the day-to-day, and I was there to support and provide the guidance and occasional parent conversations. But when you scale 5 times across more than 5 states, it is impossible to visit every school, even in a year, when you factor in just the cost associated with the travel and the time associated with visiting.
well, especially if anybody at home wants to see you.
Right, exactly. And
Like 26 schools, that'd be like every other week you'd be somewhere, or you would be like, okay, I will see y'all in 2 months, and you just go hit everybody,
that's right. I'm sure get one of those branded like tour buses like the rock bands do and just travel up and down the New Jersey Turnpike. But the challenge has been maintaining the level of expectations for outcomes while scaling so quickly, because you need to learn who is joining your school family, right? It's through the due diligence process, it's kind of like a remote dating, because you're looking at these schools on paper, but you really are not living with them. You're just dating them, and you're trying to see, like, are they compatible with you on paper? But then the deal is closed and assume operations, and you have to start then living the experience, and then you start finding out, well, they presented themselves differently on paper than reality, but you're learning that while you're continuing.
Almost always.
Yes. Yes. Particularly around revenue, when you start to see, well, oh, they forgot to tell you about that grant revenue that was there, or they start to tell you about, oh, that one person who did 5 different jobs, they're leaving. We forgot to tell you. So now you have 5 roles that you need to fill in that school. So it's maintaining the consistency and expectation of the outcomes that you want of the schools, while adding more and more members to your family and learning more about them. That has been the most difficult for us. And
so let's talk you personally, because I can imagine, especially if you went from 5 schools where you got to visit, and even though you probably had a similar title of something like CEO, now you're in truly what has to be a hands-off CEO role. What kind of adjustment is that for you, or is that something you're excited about? If somebody was listening to this, because we have most of the people who listen to our show are directors. We have probably about 40-50% that are also owners or are owners, right? So we've got a mix. But if you're listening to this and you're going to all of a sudden go from a few schools to even maybe other businesses, because sometimes we run into folks who might only have a few schools, but then they've got business A, business B, business C, a little side hustle over here as well. Oh, by the way, I have a couple Airbnbs and I rent boats, right? So so at some point in time, you have to take yourself out of the equation. How have you managed to build the depth of your leadership team so rapidly, or what were the tools that you used that you were like, these are how I want my people to communicate or
Mhm.
come on board?
So I did it in a way that I feel was the safest and most secure way. And that was before I even had any schools, I already had hired a head of schools, a director of finance, an operations person, and an administrative assistant. So I created a team that the portfolio could grow into rather than saying, oh my goodness, I need somebody to manage these schools and then play catch up while running the risk of having some of those schools' needs not being met,
Oh, I
right?
love that. That's
So
such an insightful tip for somebody who might be listening who's, because I think most of the folks we run into are doing the other. They're scrounging, trying to figure out, hey, can I put this square peg in a round hole and make it work?
yes.
And sometimes it doesn't. And so
Or
were these people that,
or promoting a assistant director at one site to be the curriculum coordinator for 6 schools. Well, that's a big jump from assistant director at one school to a curriculum coordinator at 6 schools. And you've got to have some up leveling of their personal vision of themselves and of their skills and of their communication skills to go from one to the other. And I think it's a great thing to do, but so often when we make those promotions, we're not giving them additional training and support to re-envision themselves and develop the new skills they're going to need.
Right. And
I
when I
mean,
when I was looking for the team members to join this new venture, I took my time because I had the luxury of not having a portfolio, right? So I
mhm.
wasn't scrambling to fill an essential need, but I was taking my time to fill that essential need. And I interviewed a lot of people and I did not settle. I waited until I found the right people for the right positions, and
okay,
those people
wait. I just
served us
want
well.
everybody to grab that phrase. I did not settle. I waited for the right people. Because I think if nobody took anything else out of this episode, that phrase needs to be something that everybody, like, if you're taking notes, if you're not taking notes, go back and take notes. I don't know what minute we're on, but I wish I did. And I'd be able to go back to this minute, because I think that is absolutely an important piece for folks who, I don't care if all you're doing is growing your actual program from 30 students to your licensed capacity of maybe 80 students. You have staff that you have to acquire going from 30 to 80 students, right? So still not settling and taking your time is a really important, that and what you said earlier about you built your team to handle the growth. And I wish everybody was funded in a way that they could do that, because so many folks in business in general, not just in early childcare, do find themselves undercapitalized, which means they start with what they need versus the staff they want. And in your case, not even a year. Like, this was staff you needed probably within 3 to 6 months of starting to acquire schools.
That's correct, because in order to acquire schools, not just, I'll handle the business aspect of it, dealing with brokers, but there are licensing applications, compliance requirements, zoning applications, inspections, FF&E, inventories, messaging. You have to have a handbook. You have to have all the infrastructure as if you had a school with students and parents and policies and procedures, but you don't. So you have to envision it, which is a great and fun activity to build the school of your dreams, right? And not have to build it around what's already happening, but to start from scratch and what is it that we want? And then as new schools start joining the portfolio, you now have that framework to start rolling out in phases. And it has been a really great exercise in the realities of early childhood, because one of the pieces is, so many times we have schools joining our portfolio where the owners just they settled for staff because the
Yeah.
crisis for staffing is national, and you need people if you want to enroll, but you don't always have the luxury of 20 people coming to your interviews. You may get one, if any. and you're just like, oh, you showed up, can you start tomorrow? But that doesn't always imply quality. And that's what we're finding. We're finding some disconnections, people not connected to mission, people who are there to get paid, people who are there not for the children, but for themselves, right? Which is in general across all industries. But we're seeing it so frequently that the conversations that happen at conferences and on podcasts like these around staffing challenges, it is real. And it has held back so many schools and the potential for so many owners to grow. And it needs to gain much more attention than it already has.
So I'm going to guess that you probably, instead of looking for people who were in early childcare that you could train to the job, you actually found professionals in the job that you trained into early childcare.
In all but one position, yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
because I'm like finance, HR, other than head of schools, I'm thinking somebody head of schools probably needed to have a little bit of a background. And again, this is something that a lot of folks in our industry, like we have this conversation regularly with folks about a position we call the enrollment specialist. And we tell everybody, stop trying to find an early childcare person, go find yourself a car salesperson, because you need somebody who understands sales and follow through and follow up and has a personality, because a good salesperson can sell anything. And, they don't, but not every awesome teacher can sell their program, because sometimes we get too attached to the person coming through the door. And if you haven't done sales and you're not used to a no or knowing what to do to prevent the no, but like I would love it if every childcare center went and hired a commissioned-based salesperson who, as long as that family was enrolled, they get 10% of their tuition for life. If you did the job well, that could be a really nice,
Yeah.
and you're only paying for what they actually do.
But it's incentivized, right? They have an
Mhm.
incentive to perform. They have
Yep.
an incentive. And we do that with all of our directors. All of our directors have bonuses connected to enrollment gains. Each quarter, the net gain of students, it's part of their enrollment bonus. And it's an incentive because a lot of times directors, they understand their role, but far too often owners don't share the economics of the school with directors. So directors might not know how important it is to convert that tour to enrollment, right? Like they may not know the importance. They may recognize it is important, but specific to their context of how important that transition is from tour to enrolled, unless they know the economics behind it, or they're being rewarded for it. Right. Then there's going to be that drive to not take no for an answer, but to do that follow-up, which often fails after the person walks out and you never hear from them again. So, incentivizing is really important.
Oh, it's so funny that you said it that way, because, we talked earlier about hiring people who aren't from the industry for key roles in your central office. But if you think about it, or people who may not realize, but somebody who works in management and retail or management and hospitality, that's exactly how their bonuses happen. It's entirely based off of, the amount of revenue, the lack of returns, those customer satisfaction. So whether or not you're running a TJ Maxx or a McDonald's franchise, your bonuses are often structured to exactly what you just talked about. So I like, hoping that people are realizing that just because people do it in our industry one way doesn't mean you have to, because there's a lot of industries that do it differently. So go, if you're listening and you're like, I could never do that. Well, first of all, pick up the phone, have a conversation with Carrie or I. I'm sure you can we'll have Jason's information in the show notes. And so you could probably reach out to Jason on LinkedIn or through his contact page, and he'll probably be able to at least send you a podcast link, because Jason also has a podcast where you might be able to get some of these questions answered in short, not like he's got 26 schools plus more coming, I'm sure. Like, I doubt he's got lots and lots of time, but he'd probably be able to go look here or go read this book, because books are wonderful mentors. So Carrie, I know that your Wi-Fi has coming and going, as far as sometimes you have decent bandwidth and sometimes you don't. So Let's see if you have decent bandwidth and can ask a question.
Well, I mean, I think that a thing that would be helpful for the listener to know is if they are a director and their program has just gotten acquired by a big conglomerate, what should they do to prepare themselves, their staff, for that to be a positive and a productive relationship instead of going, uh-oh, we've been bought by the big man and we, run for the hills, right? How
Yeah.
can they set up a positive relationship and see whether they've been bought by someone like you or somebody who is only motivated by revenue? How can they have that relationship?
That's a great question because there are a lot of acquisitions happening, and the groups or the individuals acquiring them are acquiring them for different reasons. So, the first thing I would tell that director is learn about the organization that has just acquired you, right? If it's a national consolidator, then you can easily assume before they start talking with you of what you should expect because the national consolidators run all their schools the same way. Right, the cookie cutter approach.
Okay,
Which
so
benefits.
will you define that for people listening? How do they know if it's a consolidator versus maybe somebody with a big heart?
Yes. Well, if you look at their school and you look at their organization and they say they have 2,500 locations across
Oh,
the United States, then you know that every single one of those locations looks the same or and your school will look just like theirs. And your school name will change and a lot of the operational practices will change and you won't have as much local control as you may have had prior. So really doing a deep dive and Googling and researching the CEO. And one of the things I always found interesting is, and there's pros and cons to this, but if you look at the CEOs of all the national national consolidators, the charters that have 2,000 locations or 1,500 locations, none of the CEOs come from education. They're all like CEO of retail, CEO of a bank, right? Because at that level, it's all shareholders and the logistics of business management. They have the professionals who do the academics, the operations, the enrollment, and the teacher training, and all that other stuff. And so the larger the org chart, the more systemized you can anticipate your school being in line with all the other schools, right? And then there are some investors who will just hold that school as a revenue stream. So in that case, you most likely won't ever see the owner, but you will have some guidance, some structure that's going to evolve over time as they see where your school fits into their portfolio. No matter what, though, I would tell that director, remain open. Remain open. So many times I've chatted with directors after we've acquired where they're just breathing a sigh of relief because before that, they were built up with anxiety and spiraling in their mind of all these scenarios that they conjure up unnecessarily. And so what we've done at Eventus is we've done a really intentional job trying to be proactive in our messaging and sending out, and I send the letter out to all the staff and to all the families saying, nothing is going to change. We're going to look, we're going to listen, we're going to speak with you, we're going to learn about your community before we find ways to elevate the program. So don't worry about your jobs, you got it. Don't worry about your tuition rates, you got it. Like, we just want to come in and build a relationship. And then as time evolves, change will happen. That's not the timeline or process of implementation many organizations have, but it is one approach. And then the final thing I would tell that director is be supportive. In addition to being open, you have to be the bridge between that new owner and operator and the rest of your staff because the staff rely on the director. Even though the new organization is now their new employer, the director is the guide that the staff look to for confidence. If the director is nervous, they will be nervous. If the director is excited, the excitement will build. They're going to look to take their cue from you as the director. And of course, always ask questions, be transparent, because the new owners are going to want somebody they can trust because they don't want to run the school on the day-to-day. They need you, more than you need them in many cases. So
Oh,
show your worth by saying, you know what? I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I'm here now. And we're going to make this work because it's about the children. And let's keep that as the focus.
Absolutely love that. So Carrie, you seem to be a little better back.
I think so. We'll see.
So anything else you want to ask Jason before we kind of transition? Because I think we could stay on with Jason for probably another 30-40 minutes at least. But I know that folks are in their car and they're driving to work. And so their
Yep,
commutes
we
are getting close to being over.
yep, we don't want to hold you hostage in your car. Although a good driveway moment where you're just waiting for that one last little nugget. So, where do you see the early childhood industry going? Because we've heard a couple of people saying that it's a sunset industry and that we're going to disappear because now government is stepping in. Where do you see it?
I see government stepping in a positive way because I do not feel that uh, the goals that government might have in taking more ownership of early childhood is sustainable with the infrastructure the government has. They need private-public partnerships. We see it successfully in New Jersey with the universal pre-K, right? That they need private schools to host the type of programming that they want to fund because their current school infrastructure can't support it. I saw it when I was a public school principal, right? I saw every year they were trying to add another kindergarten to my building, and then they ended up putting the mobile classrooms out in the parking lot. The buildings just can't support the existing K-12 population, and now you want to start educating, 0 to 3. It just doesn't fit. So they need us. But at the same time, the type of funding and the type of partnerships, they're not just going to come, they're not just going to come freely. Anytime there's a partnership or money coming from the state, we know that there are strings attached. So, and that's sometimes a good thing because I feel when strings are attached, we are allowed to invest in our educators and elevate the experience, to move that shift from a daycare to a preschool, to really be focused on good program delivery. And we might be able to really change the narrative to have people see our early childhood educators as educators and not babysitters or childcare providers, that they are true educators and there's a craft that is specific to the work that they do and it needs to be honored and recognized. So, and there's babies being born every day. So the industry is not going away and we can't be replaced by AI. Licensing is not going to allow that.
No.
But what I will say in my final observation is we will need to, because of the staffing crisis, we will need to be more creative in how we see our workforce. One of the phrases I learned in the public schools that we used a lot for our staffing was skill versus will. When we're looking at a candidate for a position, just because they have a master's degree in education doesn't mean they're a good educator, right? They may have the skill.
Yep.
But if they don't have the will, if they don't want to do the work and they just want a paycheck, you can't give somebody will. So if somebody comes to you and they have no early childhood experience, but they want to work with kids, they love it, they have a dynamic personality, but their resume or their experience just doesn't, like retail, fast food, but they really want to work with it, you can give the skill. You can uptrain those new, and in fact, that's even better because you are molding that new team member in your likeness of what your model, your mission, your school community wants and needs. You don't have to come in and have somebody try to modify who they are to fit you. You're creating the framework for them to be successful.
Oh,
So
I
we're
love that.
much
Yes.
more non-traditional workers coming into the field. We need to be open to that. And just because you don't have a CDA doesn't mean you can't get one. Just because you don't have a childhood experience doesn't mean your school can't be there first. So that's what I see happening.
Oh, I love that. And I wish more people would, hopefully this becomes a really popular episode and more people would get that. Carrie and I have been preaching that for 23 years. We had a substitute service about 23 years ago. And we got really good at interviewing the people who this was an ideal schedule for. It wasn't the people necessarily with lots of experience for exactly the reason that you talked about. especially when we were hiring substitutes, we didn't necessarily want people who were, this is the only way I can work in a classroom, because you never know what you're going to get. Like you got to be flexible, and you've got to have a whole bunch of stuff in your pockets, not just your back pocket, but like cargo pants. Like you got to have all kinds of pockets full of, I'm pulling this out just because today is one of those days, and I've used my right pocket and my left pocket, and that curriculum says I'm supposed to do this, but these kids are not having that. So what else can I do? So, yeah, Carrie and I definitely believe with you 100%. We're all about, this is my favorite time of the year to hire. I love going and finding those college students and even high school students who were lifeguards, who are now unemployed. And, cause they were able to put up with kids. They were able to put up with parents. And a lot of our childcare staff think they're lifeguards anyway, because they all stand in the playground and just kind of look. So
The white stuff on their nose. Yeah.
As long as they're wearing more clothing. I think that's an important part of it, is that they need more clothes on. Okay, so again, we could be here for another 20 minutes. I think we've given you a good parking lot moment or driveway moment. And I would hope that you got something from this episode. Share it with other people who need to know in your program, around your community. Send a message. We've got the little thing where you can send us a message in the show notes. So you can let us know how you thought we did talking to Dr. Lody. And we will talk to you in our next episode.
Thanks for tuning in. We love bringing you real talk and fresh insight from the world of early childhood education. Be sure to follow us on social media to stay connected and catch all of the latest episodes. And if you're planning a conference, training, or special event, Kate and Carrie would love to speak to your audience. You can learn more about their keynote sessions and workshops at kateandcarrie.com. If you learned something today, share the show and leave us a review below. We'll see you next time on Childcare Conversations.